Hi, Lewis. How are
All
you?
right. Yeah, not bad. Very hot. It's very hot in London today, but I'm not that bad. How are you?
It's the same over here in the Netherlands. I'm just outside of Amsterdam, and it's a very sunny day. But I've been sitting
Yeah.
inside all day so far. So hopefully, in a couple hours, I can enjoy the sun still.
Yeah.
How are you holding up amidst these kind of strange measures that we have to abide by?
Yeah, it's very strange, eh? I realized very early on that this is quite similar to my day-to-day life. Um,
Okay.
if I'm in the studio, I'm stuck in a studio with no windows, no, kind of glass vision to the outside world. If I'm working at home, I'm recording and working at home, so I'm inside all day. If I'm on tour, then I'm in a van for long periods of hours and then in a tiny dressing room. So I feel like I'm quite used to it, to be honest.
Okay.
The one thing that I have struggled with is like not having the option to go and hang out with mates, or not even, we've only ever left the house to go shopping when we really
Right.
need shopping. So we do have a bit of cabin fever, I guess. But I'm trying to keep everybody's spirits high. I do a daily radio show, and I did a few Instagram festivals early on where I'm just trying to be present, because I know that a lot of people, this isn't the norm, and my
Sure.
girlfriend who I live with, she very early on kind of was struggling because it was just so different. So,
Mm,
vastly different. So yeah, I think all things considered, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with
okay.
it.
That's good to hear. So let's talk about some more fun stuff then. One of those things is your upcoming album. But before we delve
Yeah.
into the album, I like to go back to kind of the beginning a little bit because you were given a guitar at 16, and then it kind of took off. But before age 16, what role did music play in your life?
Um, so I've always been a big music fan. My whole family is very
Okay.
well, they're not musical at all. Nobody in my family plays an instrument, like in my direct immediate family plays an instrument, but everybody loves music. Whether I'm the youngest of three children, so the oldest, sorry, my sister, she listened to like current pop, a lot of Justin Timberlake, girl groups, boy groups. My brother was basically exclusively rap, and
Okay.
and growing up, I shared a room with my brother, so that kind of dictated what I was listening to. He was older than me, so he got to decide what was on the hi-fi. My mum was again current pop and like old school R&B. Like all of the classics, and then the newer stuff like current pop, like Will Young, just radio music, I guess.
Sure.
Will Young and Adele and things like that. And then my dad listened to actually a lot of reggae,
Okay.
and then like Queen, Bon Jovi, Matchbox 20, kind of American bands as well. So um, I had this like so much a variation in music around me in
Mm,
my bubble, and I was a metal fan basically.
okay.
Exclusively, I listened to like new metal. So Linkin Park was the first album I ever bought, first gig I went to. Massive fan of Slipknot growing up.
Okay.
System of a Down, Papa Roach. I basically listened to metal and pop punk. So I have this. Well, I like to think it's to my advantage now. I have this large palette of musical influence that I can draw from, and say what you want about, let's say, metal, for example. It's
Mm,
an extremely emotive music. It's an
sure.
extremely emotive genre of music, and I think that comes through in acoustic music as well. I feel like I kind of make sad music, and I feel like I'm very emotive during that. So I'd like to thank metal for that. So, like I say, I had a bunch of music playing from all directions, but I never really picked up an instrument. That was just something that never really happened. I always thought that it would be way too hard, wouldn't be able to do it, and then yeah, just I saw a video of a guy playing on YouTube, and I was like, cool, I want to give that a go, and so I got a cheap guitar for my 16th birthday, and yeah, just I don't know. Now I'm here.
One thing that I find interesting is because at a certain point you got into the production side as well of music, and you actually studied music as well. So was that kind of immediate after picking up that guitar? That kind of that
Um,
path was laying out for you?
no, so it was a very conscious decision on my part. So at 16, I picked up the guitar. I just finished our kind of mandatory school in England, and it was going through to what we call sixth form, like further education, that you choose, you know, your subjects. And I'd done that. I'd stayed at the same school that I'd been at my whole life, and you know, stayed with my friends, and just wanted to do further education. No music involved, and I did, after a year of that, I was just so ready. I just wasn't happy. I was studying subjects that I didn't love. Um, a lot of my friends were in different classes; they were studying different things. So I rarely saw those people, and so I was just like really unhappy. And I said to myself, you know, the only real thing that I loved at that time was playing the guitar, was music. And so I had said that I really wanted to pursue music. But I knew that it was, you know, incredibly kind of optimistic to imagine ever becoming a musician. You know, I just picked up the guitar, and I just knew how difficult that would have been, and how lucky I would have had to have gotten to get to that point. So I decided to just go to a college and study music technology, which is production music, live sound, like setting up events on the sound sonic kind of aspect of it, as well as setting up events for like event management, you know, learning how to work in a record label if it ever got to that point. So I knew that I wanted to work in music, and if I couldn't get there being a musician, I wanted to be able to you know, open up a club, or you know, do something where I was just around music all the time. And so yeah, I studied music technology, and it was very heavily skewed on music production, which I was very happy to do. You know, that was completely new to me. All I knew was picking up a guitar and turning on the webcam and playing. You know, that's all I knew.
Sure.
So for me, getting dropped into this place that had like 4 studios and just being like, "Hey, go and create music," was really cool. Now I kind of sometimes wish that I did more music performance stuff, so that I was better on, you know, like theory, or you know, maybe it's composition or whatever it may be. And we did touch on that in my college, but the knowledge that I learned, you know, whether it be the music industry side or whether it be the radio side or whatever it was, is just priceless. And I'm very, very glad that I studied that. Definitely.
Right. And then, like you say, you didn't expect that much out of a music career, but then very quickly you were quite young, and you have this major label deal. So, and then having kind of the knowledge that you have now after all these years, and we don't have to linger on this too long, but how do you look back at that period now? Is it kind of, was it a learning moment for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the music industry is always changing, because the consumers are changing, how people consume music is changing, and how people make music is changing very rapidly. You know, so I think there is a constant shifting industry, and also it's a guessing game. You know, nobody knows what song's going to be number one. Nobody knows which artist's going to blow up. You know, and I think that yeah, you could do certain research, and you can you know, make certain decisions that will help or hinder your success. But you know, anybody could make it really, and someone who, you know, has had a massive budget put behind them, and has all the hype in the world, might not make it. So it really is a guessing game. So I think that basically at every moment in my career so far, I could look back and say, well, I may have done that differently, or you know, maybe we should have approached that a different way. But also, I wouldn't be here if we made those decisions differently. You know, it could have. That's okay. I could be more successful. I could be much less successful. So I could have given up altogether. So I don't know. I feel like, especially those first kind of 2 years in the industry, I was very green. I was very new, and I was young. You know, I was 19 when I was signed. Yeah, I feel like sometimes I wish that I had me now there, just saying like, don't do that, or like maybe you should absolutely do that. But you know, hindsight is 2020, and as you know, at the time, everything seemed like the right decision. And you know, do I have any regrets? Not really. Maybe I would have done things slightly differently, but I can't complain, where I've landed. Definitely not. So yeah, I feel like having a little me around at that time would have helped me a little bit, but I can't complain too much.
I'm sure it's one of those things where that experience gets you to where you are now, and you wouldn't have been able to make this record if you hadn't experienced all of that. So
Yeah.
let's get into the songwriting then, because one thing I read was that Midnight was sort of a reaction to the Mornings in terms of kind of how you approached it, and then this one was again different. So what was the starting point of this whole process?
So this record, we started writing this. So my 2017, when I released my second album, Midnight, that was a crazy year for me, and it was a year that kind of almost put me off making music. I did like 150 gigs that year, and I spent a lot of time in America, like completely alone, no manager, no sound guy, no band.
Okay.
And it just got to a point where I was like, this just isn't, I'm not very happy, which then made me more kind of annoyed, because I have my dream job, this is all I've wanted to do. And to like step off stage and be like, man, I'm not enjoying this right now. It just sucks, and that made me really unhappy. So it was kind of like a vicious cycle. I wasn't enjoying it, and then because I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't enjoying it more. So after that tour, I flew back home in early November, and I basically said, like, please give me just a couple of months of not doing this. Not so much like not, making music or whatever, but I'm sure that the label and everybody would have wanted me to just start writing straight away and, hopefully get an album out as soon as possible. And I just said, look, give me a little while. The songwriting will be better. I will be better. I just need to like recharge the batteries. So I did that, and then early, I think it was maybe March 2018, I got into a writing session with my friends Nick and Ed, and we started writing what is now Fly When I Fall, which is a song on the album.
Right.
And I remember at that point I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm like happy to press go on this, because I love the sound of this song, and this is how I kind of want this album to sound. I want it to be a tip of the cap to The Morning, my first record, which is a very acoustic singer-songwriter album. Also a tip of the cap to Midnight, which is more of a band album, but with a little bit extra, a little bit different. And Fly When I Fall kind of really filled that space for me. So after that point, I was like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. And so that was March 2018 when we wrote that. And then it was like go from there, writing almost every day, kind of really trying to build a record there.
Because one thing when you take that breather, so to say, those couple of months of just taking some time, was that a moment of reflection in a way of what you had experienced on the first two albums, and did it kind of put you at ease in a way of where you were going next?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because they were both very different. The first two albums were very different experiences for me. The first album was made over 2 years with 8 or 9 producers. We released 5 EPs whilst we were recording the album. I toured constantly whilst we were recording the album. So it was a very drawn out process. And then the second record was very like, we're in a room for 2.5 weeks. We're at a residential studio. Let's make an album. And then once it's done, we just don't touch it again. We get it mixed, we get it mastered, and release it. And so kind of after and that was I recorded the second album in 2015 as well, and it wasn't released until 2017. So I had this long period of just like limbo, just waiting for the album to be released. And so I was really ready to get in and start recording, but I was like so frustrated with kind of, spending every hour of every day of every week in 2017 doing music, that I was just like, I really need to, in order for me to do this for the rest of my life, which is what I want to do, like right now, I need to not do this, and so
what did you do?
Very glad.
What did you do in that time?
Well, myself and my girlfriend had just moved into a flat, and so I was now out of my home where I grew up in Oxfordshire. I was now living in London, so I was a lot closer to a lot of my friends. I was a lot closer to the label. And we made an EP in that time as well. I did like a covers EP of like my three songs over the last 3 decades that I really enjoyed. So I was still actively playing music, but I wasn't doing it like professionally. I wasn't playing gigs. I wasn't going to 5 writing sessions a week, and I was just like recharging my batteries. Basically, played a bunch of games. Watched a bunch of movies. Just for a couple of months, just chilled out.
Because the reason why I ask is I can imagine that it's kind of I'm not sure if it kind of ties into another song, one of the songs on the record, but does writing about kind of your feelings and kind of what you're going through, does that help kind of make sense of situations, and kind of does it help you figure them out and kind of move on?
Yeah, for sure. The reason, even before I picked up a guitar, I wrote a lot of poetry growing up, and that was like my therapy. Basically, I'm not very good at talking to people about how I feel, and I do bottle everything up, and then it gets to a point where it just makes everything worse for everybody. And so in lieu of that, I basically write songs. That is my therapy. I'd say this happened and it sucked, and I'm gonna write a kind of a poetic, romanticized way on what happened, and it's off my chest. And if people understand it, great. If they don't, great. If they never hear this, great. I've said the words out loud, I've processed it in my head, and then it's done. And so it's very therapeutic for me, songwriting. And another song, you're right, I'm basically making that a more literal thing and just saying like, look, I've messed up. Let me process this. Let me put it into a song, and if you hear it and you understand, then great, we move on. If not, I'll write you another one to hopefully help you understand that.
And with that song in particular, and then it kind of this goes for most of your songs, but when you write these, do you have specific situations or specific memories in mind?
Yeah, a lot of my songs are tied to very vivid, and it could be something that happened last week, could be something that happened 12 years ago. I have this bank of things that that I've experienced, or I've been very close to somebody who has experienced them, and I'm just kind of making sense of those whilst writing songs. And a lot of them are about the same experience or the same kind of situation, but they're always very real things. But it could be, like I said, it could be something that happened yesterday, it could be something that I just remember from primary school or something, and so
And you mentioned in earlier interviews that you have as evidenced by the kind of the titles of the first EPs you put out, but did you have tend to gravitate towards sadder songs? So and first, a very basic question about this, which is, I suppose, quite difficult to define. But why do you think that is? Why do you think you gravitate more towards that side of storytelling?
I feel like personally, as we were talking about the therapeutic aspect of songwriting, I don't really need to. I don't seek therapy for happy things. It's not something that I'll happily talk to you about. A great experience I had. It's not very difficult for me to talk about. And so I think my brain kind of, when I do sit down to write a happy song, and I hear a melody, or I hear a certain lyric come out, and I'm like, well, actually that ties into this sadder thing. Should we talk about this? Should we talk about this right now? But also personally, as a music consumer and a music fan, I find that I enjoy nothing more than like sitting down, putting a sad song in my ears and just wallowing, just letting it wash over me. And I feel like music, or the music that I enjoy the most, is the music that I relate to, and the music that I think, I could have written this, or man, they're talking about me. And a lot of the time that is on the sadder side of things. So it's just a personal thing. And I do think that this record is a lot more optimistic sounding, but it might still be a happy sad song. It might be a happy sounding sad song. And that's when you hit the jackpot, when you can write a sad song, but everybody's like, oh, I want to dance to this. That's when you hit the jackpot.
Well, to me, that's always been the magic of a lot of reggae music, where it's just so joyful. But if you listen to the words and what they're saying, it
Yeah,
can be. But
painful. Yeah.
yeah, can you name me one artist or song that you've listened to recently that had that kind of effect on you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a recent song, but I listened to it again the other day, and that's Re Stacks by Bon Iver, Regarding
Right.
Stacks. Um, I mean, that for me is like the perfect song, basically,
Okay.
and I feel like a lot of stuff that Justin Bon Iver does is very or highly regarded as very good musically. But that song in particular is something that I'll never get tired of listening to that, and yeah, just the other day I stuck it on and I was like, wow, this is like, yes, absolutely.
And so, for instance, because I read that, especially over the years, you've written quite a lot, and then you have all these kinds of ideas floating about. But is it then difficult? Do you hold yourself to a kind of a high standard in those terms? Because you talk about this musicality and kind of a certain level of emotionality that you want to convey. So, is that a high standard that you put for yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I mean, I've always been a realist, and I've always, I only have so much talent, and I think that if I could do my best and write songs that mean something to me, then I am very, very happy. If somebody feels an eighth of what I feel when they listen to my music, mission accomplished. So I do think that I spend too long trying to perfect things. I do, and recently I have kind of dialed back on that, definitely. But because I think that there's a charm in that one take vocal that may not be the perfect, vocal, but and this was kind of truer on Midnight on my second record,
Okay.
because they were all very live performances. But I think that I can listen back to say a vocal or a guitar take where I miss a note or something, and it gives a song context, which I think is so important. Nowadays you have these pristine recordings. You can make anything sound good, really. And I think that that's dangerous. It's like people scrolling through Instagram and seeing these curated, perfect lives, as everybody says. As soon as music, which is kind of like the universal language of emotion, becomes that very digital and perfect. I want to keep saying perfect, but
And I always call it. Oh, sorry. I always call it a very clinical approach. It's very clean and then to me, it's kind of sucks out the soul of what can be in there.
Yeah, I think it's like a doctor's office. It's like completely sterilized, and you know what? There have been some recordings on tape that are like regarded perfect recordings, but they have their mistake. You listen to the Beatles; there are bunch of mistakes, and they're not mistakes, but it's so charming, I think, and it gives context, and I think that just adds to the relatability of music. Nobody wants to hear a robot sing about love, or sing, because you don't go, I agree with you, Comutron 2000. You want to hear somebody's pain, and I think that it's very easy to edit that stuff out when you're when you get in with your magnifying glass. And so recently I've kind of embraced that, and I think also that comes from getting out of a major label deal and kind of going through everybody demanding perfection to being like, what, it's fine if this recording has flaws, because it's a snapshot of that recording and how I felt in that moment, and I'm fine with it.
Because I can imagine, and obviously I'm not a musician, so I have no clue, but when you start to make music or art of any kind, and then inevitably at some point, if you're good at it, kind of the business side of it comes into it. But that's such an opposing kind of approach to something that's very, very emotional and very, very visceral, and then you have this very business oriented side. So having gone through that and being where you are now, can I assume that there's a lot less pressure on yourself, but also that you are able to enjoy it a lot more, the creative aspect?
Yeah, I feel like all three of these albums have their own identity, and
Okay.
and you know they're not wildly different. And I would never kind of say that I'm pushing the boundaries. I'm very comfortable in my comfort zone, and I'm aware of that.
Mm.
But I think that you're right. You go from trying to make just honest art, and then if you're very good at making honest art, somebody wants to come in and kind of not be very honest to sell the music and to get your name on a contract, and they are very conflicting things. They don't really go hand in hand. But yeah, I think that, and hopefully this only gets better as I kind of continue to make music. But I feel like now I'm more comfortable personally with putting out what I love. Maybe 5 years ago I was thinking, well, I really like that, but nobody else is going to like that. They know me for the acoustic guitar, they know me, for this, and I don't think anybody's going to enjoy that. Whereas now, I mean, the secret track, which isn't so secret now, but the secret track on the album is very different for me, and it's very challenging, I guess. And you may listen to it and say, well, that doesn't sound like Lewis Watson. I hate talking about myself in the third person, but that doesn't sound like Lewis Watson. And maybe 5 years ago I wouldn't have been comfortable with that, but now I'm, as like I said, as long as I continue making honest art or honest music, then I can never lose, really.
All right, so let's jump into a couple of songs then, because well, you write a lot about love and relationships, and you just now mentioned that you are in a relationship. So, well, I always find it interesting. So does that person know that you're writing about them in a way, or do you write about them?
Yeah, all the happy songs are about my girlfriend. Yeah. No, but like I said earlier, these things I'm writing about could have happened 10 years ago. It could have happened a long time ago. And so, just because I'm writing about it now, I definitely don't feel that way,
Okay.
Especially the sad stuff. I'm very happy. I'm very comfortable. I'm a very lucky boy. So yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
No, but because I can imagine that maybe she comes up to you, hey, is that song about me? What's going on? So, but never mind. But so then you said "Fly When I Fall" was kind of one of those key songs that kind of started everything off, and then one that stuck out for me a little bit, aside from another song, was "Castles of Sand." So what was kind of the origin? Where did that song start?
So that was actually written in a writing camp. So maybe no, I think it was last year, maybe 2018. But I was invited to this writing camp to write songs for other people, whether it be dance producers, upcoming artists, whatever it was, just to pitch songs to people. And that's something I've never really done. I've always wanted to do, but I always struggle with kind of giving away, because I write about things that are so personal to me. I always felt quite uncomfortable thinking about somebody else singing that,
Right.
But only recently I've been able to kind of, I don't know, detach myself from that emotionally. So I was absolutely up for it. And the first day we wrote this, wow, incredible, like John Hopkins style song, but for like Jess Glynne, basically. And it was like, I love it. And I still can't believe nobody's taken it, because I think it's a really good song. But yeah, that was the first time. I went in the second day, and with these writing camps, they like move everybody around so that you work with different people every day. And so for the second day, I was writing with Mark from Codeline and a producer called Rich. And so we sat down, and like straight away they were like, let's write a song for you. And I was kind of uncomfortable with that, because I'd kind of got ready to go in and write a song that may be less personal, to me, and hopefully will give it away at the end of the week or whatever. But I was just like, yeah, okay, let's try it. I'm not really in that space at the moment, but let's try it. And so we wrote this very like groovy, it was very like 80s, 90s synthy, a pulse 4 to the floor kind of beat. And I was really into it, but I knew it was too far. You know, I was like, I need to bring this back. I need to rein this in a little bit. And so I started adding the very percussive, very short guitar part, and then it kind of tied everything together. And that song's been through a crazy journey because we changed the chorus twice, and you know, there's a bunch of stuff that happened post that day. But yeah, it was a cool experience for me because I was like so ready to not write for me, and then this song just kind of fell out, and it just worked, you know. And I knew that it's quite an ambitious song in terms of, you know, it's slightly more kind of middle of the road than I'd be comfortable putting out. But I feel like with the production, we've kind of taken it, you know, slightly off to the left, and hopefully it'll appeal to, you know, a good amount of people, but also kind of not be like painting by numbers, you know. So so yeah, I'm really happy with that song. And it seems that a lot of people that maybe are kind of like, oh yeah, we've heard his stuff, you know, it's fine. When they've heard that song, they're a bit like, oh, okay, maybe I'll give it a second chance, you know, which is a really good thing as a musician, you know, that's been doing this for 8 years now. You know, it's a very nice thing to have somebody say, I'll give you a second chance. You know?
No, because what struck me about the song was kind of the way it was produced and the way it sounded and came across. And now I mentioned the producing side earlier on, and I believe the first two albums you didn't really have time to engage in a lot of that, but now you had a little bit more time to kind of revisit those skills. And so what was that like, delving into that process again?
It was great. It was really good. The first record I kind of wasn't allowed to do, or not, you know, they didn't strictly say you can't do this, but I was in with very good established producers, and that was just their thing. You know, they're like, you play the music, we'll make it sound good.
Right.
And so for the first record, that was just the given. That is what was happening. And then the second album, again, because it was such a live performance thing, you know, I wasn't really doing anything but performing, and so that became very difficult. I did do a few vocal edits and a few things, you know, drum stuff on the second album, but I was nowhere near as involved as I was on this one. This one was just myself and the producer Rich in his room for like 14-15 hour days, just like spending hours on that guitar tone, or, you know, spending hours on that synth that just wasn't right, and then going back to the first idea we had, you know, just really crafting. And that's something that I'm so proud about on this album, is that every single sound that you hear has just been like forged, you know, from nothing. And we're like, okay, we really need this kind of sound. And we're fortunate because I know Rich was actually the first session I had when I was signed to Warner Brothers. So, you know, I've known him for 8 years plus, and so he was really into it, and B, he was just like, look, I live around the corner, we can be here as long as we need to be here, you know, as opposed to like, I'll clock off at 7, they'll kick us out at 7 or whatever. So yeah, we spent a lot of time on like every single, you know, ingredient on the palette, and that's, I mean, it was really fun for me. It's quite terrifying because now not only am I responsible for, you know, how the songs, you know, are written or how they're performed, but now I'm kind of responsible for how they sound sonically as well. So it's like, you know, I can't just be like, oh yeah, well that was the producer's decision, you know, because that was kind of me, you know. So yeah, so it has been very fun. People have seemed to enjoy the production of the track so far, so you know, hopefully they'll enjoy the other half of the album as well. But yeah, it's something that I definitely want to do going forward. It's a whole new level of involvement, and it's exhausting, but it's like, you know, I don't know, sometimes it's good to just go into a room, do that one vocal take, play the guitar, and then just chill out, you know, and have everybody do everything around you. And sometimes that works. Sometimes you need that extra pair of ears to do that. But there's something about like getting in 2 hours early and working on the last take that you did yesterday, and just really making sure that everything fits, you know, and has its place. I also played a load of drums on it. Well, actually every instrument on this album, apart from the strings and drums on 2 of the songs, I played.
Okay.
So that was a really cool thing as well, because, you know, I'm not a great drummer, and I know that, but I was able to produce a beat and then transpose that beat from a drum machine to a drum kit, and I was able to do all of that and take my time with that because I knew how I wanted it to sound. I didn't have to kind of translate it to a producer. It was a much longer process because of that. It would have been much quicker if we got a drummer in for 2 days to play the songs, and then it would have been done. But now when I hear that album, I could be like, "Jock, that's me. That's all me." And so it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize. I did read that. I think on Castles of Sand, you had your drummer play the rhythm.
Yeah. So Castles of Sand and Flow and I Fall, he played the drums.
Fair enough. And so finally, then, because we talked about the kind of the emotionality and the songs, and obviously it's a weird time now. I'm sure you haven't performed any of these songs yet. But what have you heard, or what have the reactions been so far from what you can tell about the new songs?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I've done a few gigs where I played maybe 3 of the songs from the album, but it's all been. I did one with the full band, a support gig, but other than that, it's all been solo acoustic stuff. So already it's very different to the record, and so it's tough to kind of gauge the reactions because, people have heard the songs, but they haven't heard exactly how it sounds on the album. So they may like the acoustic and not like the full, or they may dislike the acoustic and like the full. So that's difficult. But with us releasing the music, we've released 5 now, I think, 5 songs. Every song has kind of had a slightly different reactions because every song is slightly different, I guess. Sure. The kind of song that I expected most people to kind of I guess be ready for, or to not be shocked by, was Flow and I Fall, because it's kind of similar to my older stuff, in terms of makeup and textures. But every other one has it's been really fun to sit back on release day and see what people think, because like a song like Because of You, which is it's a Britpop song, it's like a 90s Britpop song, and so to release that and just like be like, please don't crucify me for this, and then there are other songs like Spark is a song that I wrote years ago, and I actually wanted One Direction to have that song. That was like a song that was for somebody else, so then to do that and then kind of have that reaction of the people that may have heard it years ago go, oh yeah, I remember this song, was like a really cool thing. So each song has had its different difference in reactions, but it's always fun on release day to be like, oh, please enjoy this.
But then, so now I suppose release day is going to be different than usual, because usually it's you're going up towards playing shows and all that kind of stuff. So what is it like releasing an album in these times?
It sucks. Okay. Honestly, I was meant to be playing a London gig on release day, a launch show. I was meant to be traveling around the country doing record store, like in-store shows, and it's something that I love doing with the album. There's nothing I love more than playing a song that somebody's heard for a day or for 2 days, and they're singing every lyric back to me. That for me is like the best feeling in the world, and it sucks that's not going to happen. But it's fine. I also think it's very important. I think more than ever, people need music now, and I think that we could have changed the release date. We could have, looked at maybe hopefully releasing later in the year. And I don't have any issue with people doing that, but I just thought it was like, hey, here's something to maybe look forward to. If you like my music, here's a date that won't suck, hopefully. So I think that kind of, maybe it's not going to be the most kind of successful release, but that's fine. It's my 3rd one. Maybe if it was my 1st one, we'd reconsider, but it's my 3rd one. I just want to release new music because that means that I'm soon, I'm closer to touring and I'm closer to releasing another album. So I think it's just, kind of keeping that momentum going and just accepting that, it won't be as or it's a very different release situation. The circumstances are very different, and so the results will differ as well. And just accepting that that's fine. As long as people can enjoy it and listen to it, then that's fine for me.
Excellent. So last thought then, because and maybe this is jumping ahead way too much, but are you writing now then with all this time?
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of my day, I'm actually very busy at the moment with there's a bunch of admin stuff that goes into releasing an album that isn't as glorious and isn't as glamorous but I'm doing a lot of that. But every day, every morning, I stream for 3 hours. We do a radio show. I play music. I perform music. I just try and be there for people. I try and be present for people. So that takes up a lot of my day, and I find that or not so much a lot of my day, a lot of my energy. I'm singing for 3 hours.
Sure.
But I found that I write like little pockets of songs, a verse here or a chorus here, and I'm kind of looking forward to, at the end of this, kind of piecing those bits together, because they're not all compatible, and I know that. But I think it will be fun, a fun exercise after this to kind of revisit those little sections of songs that I've written, and yeah, who knows? Is it an album's worth? Maybe not, but there's a couple of songs in there at least.
So, yeah, like you said, at least it's probably worth looking at just for the sake of what your kind of mindset was during this whole period, and to see kind of how you dealt with it. That must be interesting. All right, Lewis, thank you very much for your time.
No problem, man.
I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope you get to enjoy the sunshine a little bit.
You too, man. Thank you very much
for
having me. Take care.